There are things you cannot prepare yourself to understand about this story, not because it is complicated, because it is not. It is, in fact, completely simple. And that is the part that is hardest to sit with.
I mean, I think one of the tragic things is that they assume several dozen people have lost their lives.
On the first night of 2026, 41 people died in the basement of a bar in one of the wealthiest ski resorts in Switzerland. Not because of a sudden, unforeseeable accident, because a man bought foam panels from a hardware store and put them on a ceiling, because a door that was marked as an emergency exit on every official document in the municipality had a steel bolt across it, because the bar had not been inspected in 6 years, because an internal audit that documented all of this was written in 2023, circulated to 7 officials, stamped, filed, and never mentioned again. This film is about how those things happen, and about the 16-year-old boy who sent his mother a text message just after midnight and never came home.
Qu'il soit vivant ou décédé, je vous en prie, contactez-moi. Je ne sais pas dans quel état de brûlure il est. Je ne sais pas s'il est reconnaissable, je ne sais pas. Tout ce que je veux, c'est retrouver mon enfant. Tout ce que je veux, c'est retrouver mon fils.
Crans-Montana sits about halfway between Geneva and the Italian border, tucked into a valley in the Swiss Alps at roughly 1,500 meters above sea level. It is the kind of place where a hotel room costs 800 francs a night in ski season, where the streets fill every December with people who have flown in from Paris, Milan, London. Where New Year's Eve is not an occasion, it is an event. It is also a place where, in the center of town, there was a bar sitting empty in 2015. Jacques Moretti was 49 years old when he signed the lease. He was Corsican originally, French-born, relocated to Switzerland with his wife Jessica in the early 2000s. People who knew the couple described them the same way, consistently across multiple accounts, as hard workers. People who put everything into whatever they were building. Jacques saw the empty bar in the center of Crans-Montana and recognized something in it. He signed the papers in June 2015. Then he spent the next 6 months doing something that most people who open bars do not do. He renovated the space almost entirely himself. He told a local newspaper at the time that he had laid 14 tons of stone into the walls with his own hands. He was proud of it. The bar opened in December 2015. Corsican cured meats, local wines, good music, no entry fee, a young crowd, exactly the kind of place that packs out on New Year's Eve. Within a decade, the Morettis were driving a Maserati, a Bentley, a Porsche. They owned 2 other bars in the region. By any external measure, they had built something real. But there was one decision Jacques made during those 2015 renovations that would matter more than anything else he ever built. The basement bar needed soundproofing, so he went to a DIY store, a hardware shop, the kind that sells to home renovators, and he bought acoustic foam panels, the kind sold for home recording studios. He fixed them to the ceiling himself. Here is what you need to understand about that. Swiss fire safety regulations do not permit raw polyurethane foam to be left exposed and uncovered in a public venue. The material must be treated, sealed, or replaced with something that actually meets fire-resistant standards. Hardware store foam does not meet those standards. When fire safety engineers reviewed photographs of La Constellation's interior after the disaster, they described what they saw as highly flammable material, installed in a way that did not comply with Swiss regulations in any meaningful sense. And there is something else about polyurethane foam that matters. When it burns, it does not simply burn. It releases carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, dense toxic smoke, gases capable of incapacitating a person within seconds before the flames have reached them, before they have understood what is happening. Jacques Moretti, while in custody, told prosecutors he bought that foam from a hardware store and put it up himself. There is no record of anyone ever testing it, inspecting it, or ordering it removed. There is a video, footage from New Year's Eve 2019, 6 years before the fire, later broadcast by Swiss national television. It shows the inside of La Constellation's basement during a celebration almost identical to the one that would kill 41 people. Sparklers on champagne bottles, music, a packed crowd. the foam on the ceiling directly above, and in that footage, audible above the noise, a member of staff can be heard warning customers, telling them to watch out for the foam as the sparklers are raised toward the ceiling. Someone who worked in that bar on New Year's Eve 2019 with an open flame in the room felt enough concern about what was above their customers' heads to warn them out loud. Nothing changed. For a warning to mean something, someone has to act on it. Le Constellation's last fire safety inspection was in 2019, the same year as the footage. The same year a staff member warned customers about the ceiling above their heads. That inspection found the foam, noted it, and considered it acceptable under the regulations as they stood. No fire alarm was required. The bar fell just below the size threshold that would have mandated one. The inspection passed, and then nothing. Years, not one visit. The question of why that happened will take us somewhere considerably darker than a foam ceiling. But first, it is New Year's Eve again. At 1:26 in the morning on January 1st, 2026, someone in the basement of Le Constellation raised a champagne bottle. Sparkler candles were attached to it, the way they had been on every New Year's Eve before. The bottle went up. The sparklers went up with it. They came too close to the ceiling. What happened next took approximately 10 seconds. The foam caught. Witnesses described the room going from celebration to inferno before people understood what they were seeing. Some were still dancing when the ceiling above them ignited. The fire did not spread slowly. It engulfed the room. Because that is what polyurethane foam does in an enclosed space. Fire safety engineers later described what happened as a flashover, a near-simultaneous ignition of all combustible material and gases in the room, temperatures spiking past 500 degrees, an overpressure wave that witnesses described as feeling like an explosion, and the people in that basement were already breathing poison before they saw a single flame. The only way out was a narrow staircase. Photographs from the 2015 renovation suggest that Jacques Moretti had made that staircase narrower during his remodel. There was one other option. On every municipal safety document, a door in that basement was listed as the designated emergency exit. A former bartender later told investigators that Doctor was always locked during his time working there. That night, a victim's mother confirmed it. Her daughter had worked as a waitress at Le Constellation. She knew exactly where that exit was. She had used it during her shifts. She was found dead in front of it. The bolt was across it from the inside. More than 150 emergency responders arrived. 40 ambulances, medical helicopters from across Switzerland. Burn unit beds filled so fast that the most critically injured were airlifted to specialist centres in other countries. 41 people died. 26 of them were teenagers. The youngest were 14 years old. Arthur Brodard was 16. He was a footballer from Lutry, a small town on the shore of Lake Geneva. Just after midnight on January 1st, 2026, he sent his mother a message. "Happy New Year, Mum. I love you." That was the last she heard from him. She spent the next 2 days giving DNA samples to authorities to help identify his body among the dead. When she finally confirmed his death on social media, she wrote, "Our Arthur has now left to party in paradise."
Notre Arthur est maintenant parti faire la fête au paradis.
His football club lost 7 members in the same fire. 5 more were in hospital fighting. The 41 people who died came from 19 different nationalities. Switzerland declared a national day of mourning. Church bells rang across the entire country for 5 minutes. The presidents of France and Italy stood alongside Switzerland's head of state at the memorial because 9 French nationals and 6 Italians were among the dead. The Pope sent condolences. 41 people, 19 nationalities, 26 of them teenagers, and a building that had not been inspected since 2019. This is where most stories about disasters end, at the grief. But the grief is not the story. What was allowed to happen before the grief, and what happened in the days and months after, that is the story. Jacques Moretti was not inside Le Constellation when the ceiling caught fire. He was at one of his other venues across town. Jessica Moretti was inside. She escaped with, in her own words, slight burns on one arm. But multiple witnesses reported something else. According to reporting by Italian newspaper La Repubblica, and this is an allegation, not a conviction, Jessica Moretti was seen by multiple witnesses carrying the cash register out of the building as people died around her. In the days after the fire, the couple shut down the bar's social media accounts, the same accounts investigators needed to access for evidence. Both were charged within days. Negligent manslaughter, negligent bodily harm, negligent arson. Initially, prosecutors said neither was considered a flight risk. Then, 8 days after the fire, on the same day Switzerland held its National Day of Mourning, Jacques Moretti was arrested. The reason? He is a French citizen, and France does not extradite its own nationals. Prosecutors could not take the risk that he would cross the border and stay there. Outside the court, Jessica Moretti, released under judicial supervision, spoke to reporters. She said, "I would like to apologize to all the victims. It is an unbelievable tragedy."
Jamais on aurait pu imaginer ça. Et ça s'est passé dans notre établissement. Et je tiens à m'excuser.
But the owners were only one part of what had failed. By law, every bar in Crans, Montana, required an annual fire safety inspection. The mayor, Nicolas Ferraud, stood before journalists on January 6th, 5 days after 41 people were dead, and confirmed what was already being suspected. La Constellation had not been inspected since 2019, and it was not alone. 5 safety officers, 10,000 buildings, annual inspections required by law. The mayor said he had no answer as to why it had happened. The explanation that eventually emerged was this: the municipality's entire inspection record system had been run by a single self-employed IT contractor. That contractor's system had gone offline. No backup existed. When officials tried to determine which buildings had been inspected and when, the records were gone. They had to be reconstructed manually. Inspectors requested additional resources to manage the backlog. Those requests were denied. Hotels, restaurants, schools, public buildings, some had never been inspected at all. Others had not been checked since 2018. And then, in February 2026, the detail emerged that reframes everything that came before it. In August 2023, the municipality conducted an internal audit of its own operations. That audit found procedural failures inside the inspection system. It documented disciplinary cases that had gone unaddressed. It documented employees who had refused to carry out assigned tasks. It described, in writing, administrative dysfunction of the kind that leaves buildings unchecked and people unprotected. The report was circulated to the 7 members of the municipal executive. It was stamped. It was filed. It was never made public. When prosecutors began building their case after the fire, the report was not in their files. Victims' families requested access. They were denied. The municipality had documented its own failure in August 2023. 41 people died in January 2026. As of April 2026, this is no longer a case with 2 suspects. Prosecutors have expanded the investigation to 9 individuals. The mayor himself, Nicolas Ferraud, now faces criminal charges: culpable injury, endangering lives, arson by negligence, violations of his legal duties as the authority responsible for fire safety oversight. 2 municipal safety officers face the same charges. Jacques Moretti is scheduled for another interrogation on June 5th. Meanwhile, French courts have already rejected Switzerland's request to seize real estate belonging to the Morettis in Cannes and Corsica. Assets in a country that will not extradite its own citizens. One of the lawyers representing the victims' families said it plainly: "We end up with a whole plethora of people in charge who are ultimately responsible for very little." The maximum sentence under Swiss law for all charges combined is 4.5 years. There is a pattern that runs through disasters like this one. It is almost never one catastrophic failure. It is always a sequence of smaller ones, decisions that seemed manageable at the time, risks that were tolerated because dealing with them was inconvenient, systems that no one realized had stopped functioning until the moment they needed them most. A man renovates a basement with foam from a hardware store because it was cheaper than what the regulations required. A staff member warns customers about that foam on New Year's Eve 2019, and nothing changes. An inspection system collapses because it ran through a single contractor and no one built a backup. An internal audit documents all of this in 2023, and the report never leaves the room it was written in. An emergency exit gets bolted because it was more convenient that way. a fire alarm is not required because the bar falls just below the threshold that would have mandated one. Inspectors with 5 staff and 10,000 buildings are denied the resources they asked for. Not one of those decisions on its own killed anyone. Together, they killed 41 people in approximately 10 seconds, the youngest of whom were 14 years old. Arthur Brodard played football for a club in Lutry. His team lost 7 members on the first night of 2026. 5 more were in hospital. His mother has not deleted the message. Happy New Year, Mum. I love you. No one has gone to trial. The investigation is still open, and somewhere in Switzerland, the families who lost children on the first night of 2026 are not waiting for answers. They already know what happened. They are waiting for someone, anyone, in the chain of failures that killed their children to be held to account.